decode a really powerful pattern, one that, once people finally saw it, completely shattered what they thought was a fundamental law of human suffering. This is the story of how a bunch of accidents, of all things, revealed a hidden truth about pain and ended up changing our world literally forever. For almost all of human history, this quote right here, this was the brutal reality of medicine. We're talking before the mid-1800s. Surgery wasn't really seen as a cure. It was more of a desperate, absolutely terrifying last resort. Can you even imagine? Patients were physically held down while surgeons just raced against this ticking clock of pure agony and shock. It's just a horrifying thought. And it's really important to get this. Pain wasn't just some unfortunate side effect. No, it was seen as a fundamental and absolutely unavoidable part of any surgery. It was considered a law of nature, as certain as gravity. The very idea that you could have an operation without suffering, it was completely unthinkable. So that's the big question, right? How did we stumble upon a pattern that could literally turn off pain? Well, the answer is kind of weird. It didn't come from some brilliant scientist on a deliberate search. It wasn't an invention in the way we usually think of it. It was more like a slow, accidental noticing of a pattern that was hiding in plain sight the whole time. A signal that people kept seeing, but just kept misunderstanding. Okay, so the very first clue that pain might not be this unbreakable law, it didn't come from a sterile lab or university. Nope, it showed up at a party. Seriously. And believe me, these were not your typical get-togethers. Yeah, they were called laughing parties. Basically, guests would get together and inhale ether or nitrous oxide, laughing gas, just for fun. And people started noticing something really bizarre. In this euphoric state, people would stumble around, fall over, get bumps and bruises, but they wouldn't show any sign of pain at all. It was just seen as this weird side effect, an amusing party trick. And for decades, that's all anyone thought it was. So here's this incredibly obvious clue, right, that these chemicals could somehow block pain, but it was just overlooked for years. And when one man finally did connect the dots, his attempt to show this pattern to the world ended in total public humiliation. I mean, the evidence was right there, but it was just completely misinterpreted. This guy, a dentist named Horace Wells, had actually seen the effects of laughing gas firsthand at one of those parties, and a light bulb went off. He became convinced it could be used for painless tooth extractions. So in 1845, he sets up this huge public demonstration for all the top doctors at Massachusetts General Hospital. You can just feel the pressure, right? The stakes were absolutely massive. So Wells gives the patient the nitrous oxide, and the surgeon starts pulling the tooth. But then, the patient cries out. Just a little bit, and that's all it took. The whole audience of surgeons and students, they just start jeering, laughing at him. In their minds, they saw exactly what they expected to see, pain. So the whole thing was called a complete failure, and poor Wells, totally humiliated, just gave up on his work. But here's the crazy part. This is the hidden truth of the whole thing. The patient admitted later that he hadn't felt any pain at all. He said he cried out because he was just so nervous. Think about that. The cry was a reaction to the fear of pain, not the actual feeling. The pattern was right there. It was a success. But everyone was so conditioned to expect agony that they literally could not see the reality that was staring them in the face. And you know what? Wells wasn't the only one who saw a piece of this. It's like the pattern was trying to break through for decades. Way back in 1799, a chemist named Humphrey Davy noted the pain-dulling effect of laughing gas and even suggested it for surgery. Nobody listened. Then in 1842, a doctor successfully used ether in a private surgery, but he never published his findings. Every single one of these was a near miss, a signal that just got lost in the noise. It was going to take one more shot to finally make the world pay attention. All right, so that final attempt, it takes place just 1 year after that public disaster. And get this, in the very same room, the same operating theater. But this time was going to be different. This was the moment the pattern was finally, undeniably revealed to the world. Okay, so picture this. A dentist named William Morton, who actually used to work with Wells, gives the patient ether from this glass globe. Then the surgeon steps up and starts to remove a tumor from the patient's neck. But he's not rushing. He's careful, methodical. And the patient doesn't flinch, doesn't make a sound. The whole room is just packed, watching in total stunned silence. And when it's all over, the surgeon turns to this crowd of disbelievers and says, "Gentlemen, this is no humbug." And just like that, the unbreakable law was broken. And the fallout from that single successful moment, it was huge and it was fast. News just spread like wildfire. The entire world of medicine was about to change forever. I mean, think about the difference. Before this moment, the best surgeon was just the fastest one. It was all a desperate race against pain. But after, surgery could finally become a careful, precise science. Doctors could take their time. They could perform these incredibly complex operations inside the body that were just pure science fiction before. This discovery really laid the foundation for all of modern medicine as we know it. So the pattern was finally decoded, and what it revealed was this huge paradigm shift. Pain wasn't some inevitable curse. It wasn't a law of nature. It was simply a biological signal zipping through the nervous system. And just like any signal, you could interrupt it. It was like a hidden door in the very fabric of human experience had just been found and pushed wide open. And this story really illustrates a much larger pattern in the history of discovery itself. So many of our greatest breakthroughs, I'm talking about things like penicillin, X-rays, even the pacemaker, they weren't the result of some straight line, logical plan. They were accidents. They were chance observations that someone with a prepared mind looked at and said, "Wait a minute, that's a new pattern." So it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Our whole reality is governed by things we believe are absolute, unbreakable truths. But what this story of anesthesia shows us is that sometimes the most profound truths of our existence are simply patterns we haven't learned to see yet. Which leaves us with a pretty big question. What's the next one?